Welcome to Teachers Transition Podcast, a show dedicated to supporting teachers transition in, through, and out of education. Grab your seat and let's talk about how to make your next transition a successful one. Happy Thursday, everyone. This is Alex Kirton coming from the great state of Texas. We're a Teachers Transition Podcast where we're helping teachers transition in, transition through, and transition out, if that is your desire of education. And if you were listening to our last episode, I have the love of my life, the mastermind of all things, she is the guru of all things that I know. Her name is Keyla Kirton, and we're back for episode 2 because we were just chatting it up about so many great things, and I had to bring her back because there's so many educational and thought stones that we need to unturn and unearth. So thank you, Keyla, for joining us again.
Thank you, love. It's an honor to be here with the renowned Alexander Kirton. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. I'm so serious.
Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, she is the reason for this podcast because this was her way of encouraging me to kind of do something to give back. And I'm typically the shy person, but now this is something I'm really enjoying doing. So thank you for seeing that in me, and thank you for the people that you are helping to reach, because this is about impact. And today, if you weren't listening to the last episode, we talked about her journey, which spans from journalism, 60 Minutes, reporting on the air train, to working in HR, working for social services, to being an assistant dean at a college, to working as a HR leader for one of the largest school districts in the country, to transitioning to working for a hospital and HR, the list goes on and on. And today we're going to shift to one of her passion topics, which is leadership and mental health. And we recognize that you are a mental health advocate. And how did mental health awareness become a part of your professional mission?
Wow. Yeah. So Alex and I are both, I would say, we're both mental health advocates. I think very early on, even in our marriage, we've benefited so much from counseling and really great counselors, great advice, great coaching. And then eventually, for our children, anxiety and depression is real. And so we went through a process with our children where that was something that we had to deal with. It resulted in that experience being my topic for a TEDx talk, okay. Which was one of the hardest things that I had to do. But after the TED Talk, I had the opportunity to talk to so many other parents and learn that, everyone, we weren't alone. I think number one, as a family, there were so many other families going through the same thing and didn't have the resources. They just didn't know. And just like us, right, we had to learn. And so I think through that experience, we started to, continue to develop, really good best practices for what's worked for us and for our family. And also, of course, we felt like we wanted to share that. And so that's kind of spilled over into the workplace. And especially in HR, I found myself, listening to people and learning about different, folks that were either depressed or had anxiety, and having those conversations. And it created opportunities for me to share our experience. Even to the point where at Infor, they had these working communities, and they had one for mental health. Okay. And Adriana Deneno was one of the leaders of that, and she had a podcast. And so she invited Alex and I to talk about our experience. And so that was really helpful. And I think, again, through having that conversation and kind of having that publicly shared, it opens so many opportunities for me to talk to colleagues and people in the business and even my clients about mental health
Yes.
and balance and thought processing. And
Hmm.
so I would say, Alex, our personal experience, but also, just being able to make it okay to talk about it through the TED Talk and through our appearances on various podcasts.
Awesome. Awesome. Yes, that is definitely an important topic and one that has not been talked about enough. And it's
Hmm.
a ever-present reality, even for teachers and
Yeah.
education. You know, um, being in HR and also being an advocate. What, from your experience, what are some of the early warning signs of burnouts that professionals should not ignore?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say, first of all, at any point, because I think sometimes get uh we get caught up in the terms and we're like, well, it's
Hmm.
not burnout. I'm not,
Yeah.
So I want to change that, Alex. If we can say, just if you are really frustrated at work, if you're really having a difficult time, if there are challenges to the day to day
Hmm.
job that you do that are becoming harder and harder for you to cope with, I think those are signs, right? Those are signs that you need to talk to someone, whether that is another teacher or a teacher leader or your own private counselor. For those of you that are teachers, a lot of your districts have EAPs,
Yes.
so employee assistance programs. And through the EAP, it's a confidential, many times a third party organization, putting my HR benefits hat on. It's usually a third party organization. And so they pair you with a counselor, and a lot of times there's no copay. And you can have 6 sessions, eight
Yes.
sessions where you can work through. And from what I've seen, and this may be different with your districts and your different plans, but each topic you get a set of 6 sessions. So
Mm.
let's say this particular thing is my teacher leader and I are not getting along, but then the next 6 sessions you want to talk about the student stress, and then the one after you want to talk about family.
Hmm.
Each one of those is a free session, a free series of sessions that you can take advantage of. So, if money is an object, it shouldn't be. You guys should, and I pray that you do. You have resources to talk to
Yes.
someone,
Yes.
because I think what happens with burnout is, and we see it too in HR, we see folks that, they sort of prolong and they ignore, and then they have a breaking point. Something happens at home or something happens
Hmm.
at school. And
Hmm.
so now we're going from something that could have been mitigated over several counseling sessions to the employee or the person now needing an intermittent leave or
Yeah.
needing some type of extended leave, right, to manage some of these issues. And so I would say if you're having more difficulty with things that normally wouldn't be an issue, I'd say that's a really good indication that you got to start having that conversation and getting some guidance and really being honest about where you are and how you're feeling and validating and acknowledging those feelings, but also working through thinking about what the next best step is.
Excellent, excellent advice. And especially from the HR perspective, because I'm sure you receive, referrals and educational leaders, that, send you information about an employee and they don't know how to navigate and some of those things, not everything can be, but that's a good start, and if you're out there, a lot of those EAP programs are free and they're so helpful. And like Kayla said,
Mhm.
it's confidential, so you don't have to worry about a report going back to your principal or educational leader. So,
Yeah.
all of us go through, transitions. We have rough years, sometimes rough classrooms. We have, difficult administrators. We have challenging parents. We have
Yeah.
life, family, all those things are going 1,000 miles an hour. So just want to shout that out as a leader that has experienced that. It's
Yeah.
it's real. So
It is.
how can educators transition into new spaces without carrying unhealthy work patterns with them? And I'm going to start by saying, because I am in a several Facebook groups of people that are desperately looking to leave education because
Hmm.
they are burned out, or it's not getting paid enough, or not being treated properly, or they need to in some cases think the next thing is necessarily going to be so much better, and they don't deal with what they're doing with now emotionally. Can you talk about how not to carry those unhealthy you know behaviors and mindsets to the next opportunity?
Yeah. One book that I recommend to anyone that I coach is The First 90 Days.
Hmm.
And it's a book that really walks you through how to be a new employee in a new context. Some of the advice is related to leadership and that kind of thing. So if you're going to be a supervisor, how to build a rapport quickly with other leaders, and but you can get past that. If you get past that, there's some really important and really helpful advice in the book of how you get acclimated in a new context in a new company. And I will tell you, I know that this podcast is teachers transition, so that's one context. But I can tell you, transitioning from HR, department in one organization to an HR department in another, it's still a very dramatic transition.
Yes.
Every organization, it's almost like a different family, a different set of values, a different set of rules. They value different things. I came from an organization that they valued being there 24/7. And then in another organization where they did not. They
Yeah.
wanted you to leave at 4:30,
Exactly.
4:45 the latest. We're turning the lights off. What are you doing here? Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And so you have to be adaptable. So I would say, I think when you speak to, habits from your previous role, I think one of the biggest culture shocks, and you probably can speak to this as well, is that in corporate America, um, a lot of times the busy work is not there. And so I would say that folks that are not used to that pace find themselves having a difficult time knowing how they're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
No. Am I doing okay? Because this was a slow week. I had 3 calls and 2 meetings, and am I going to get paid for all these
Mm,
40 hours? And
nothing.
I
Twiddle
just
the thumbs.
answered emails and,
Yeah.
right? Are we okay? Do I still work here?
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing, right? That the reward system is different, the process is different. And so as a teacher transitioning to corporate America, I would say that's probably one of the biggest transitions you'll experience
Mm,
is the pace of how you're onboarded.
yeah.
You're not going to get dropped 500 things to do at once. It's sometimes that they'll ease you into it. Sometimes they throw you into the fire,
Yeah.
sometimes too. But even so, you're there as a listener, you're there as an observer, you're shadowing someone. And so
Yeah.
you're not rolling up your sleeves and doing busy work very, very, very much in the beginning. And so sometimes it's hard to gauge, is this working out? Am I doing well? Is this a good match for me? So
Mm,
I would say, if that's you and if that's important to you, you know, find some colleagues, and even if your boss is that person early on, find people you can have these conversations with who can talk you off the ledge. You're
no,
okay. You're fine. Nobody's
yeah.
worried that you only answered 2 emails this week. Yes, you're salaried, so you don't have to worry about that. Do you need to go to the doctor? Yeah, you're fine. You kind
Yeah.
of need to have those conversations because I think I've worked with folks and train people and train folks that have transitioned in. And so I'd say that's kind of the biggest thing is not feeling like you have enough to do in a day or not feeling as productive as you're used to, busy, busy, busy students, 7 periods back to back, 15-minute, 45-minute break for a whole day, it's a very different pace. But at the same time, there are weeks, and Alex can tell you that we're, we're getting 2, 3 hours of sleep in
Mm,
a day. back to back to back because we have deadlines, because we have a go live. We're on, for the whole weekend, working the weekend because the client is going live with the new tool. And so we have to be there to support. And so where you have the quiet weeks, enjoy that, because there are going to be times that it's going to be 24/7, 365 for a little bit, right? And so I think it balances it out. But if you're not used to that, you
Yeah,
might feel like this is not really, we're not being very productive. But
sure.
yeah.
Absolutely, and teachers kind of go through some of those cycles, especially when it comes to state assessments, and there's periods in the beginning of the year. It's
Hmm.
and then it's craziness and marathon, and then it slows down, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
definitely teachers can adapt
Relate.
and I can relate exactly, and relate to those nuances. But it's also still a learning curve because as a teacher that had to adapt to that, I'm like, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. We're still working in this, but it's project oriented. So you know,
Hmm.
so you know, you have had the opportunity to work for corporate America, and you talked about some of those nuances. Kind of walk us through being an entrepreneur because some people, they're okay with someone else paying them and following their rules and all the things that come with that. But there's other people that feel, hey, I can go hunt and fight and go fish and by myself and become an entrepreneur. What are some leadership lessons that corporate America taught you that you can now apply differently as a CEO?
Wow. Um,
30 seconds, go.
okay. Leadership lessons that corporate America taught me that I apply as a CEO and running a business. Um, you know, I think pacing is a big one.
Hmm.
I had a conversation this week with someone that I'm coaching. Um, that what makes us a leader, right?
Hmm.
What makes you a leader is people following you.
Yes.
Is creating a system, is creating a process, is creating, our motto for Curtin Consulting Group is people, process, and purpose. It's very simple. And so people, process, and purpose. So I would say that, from my corporate experiences, I learned that culture matters,
Hmm.
values matter, pillars matter, vision matters.
Hmm.
Within four, when they were uh, bought by Coke, when Coke acquired them, there was a big culture shift and a big talk about market-based management,
Yes.
and it was such a transformational ideology for the organization. I think for our family too. I brought the book home, and um, Alex and I read the books, and we were sold on the methodology and what it meant on paper, and it impacted our family as
Absolutely.
well as it impacted the info practice. And so I think for a lot of us, we don't really when we're employees, we don't really think about what the mission and vision of the organization we work for is really about.
Yes.
And why do they make us say this? Why do we have to repeat this mantra, this, whatever? Why do we have to wear it on our shirts? Why do
Yeah.
we, but
Yes.
then when you're building a business, I think, um, and you have really clear guiding principles, they really do guide your decision making.
They do.
It's really what makes me wake up every day determined and focused, is having those guiding principles. So people, process, and purpose for me is how I interpreted what I learned in corporate America for values and pillars and vision, mission. And so for us, it makes our focus very, very, very intense and
Mhm.
very, very small. And for us, part of the people part is um, growing and developing consultants and transitioning teachers into consulting, right? Educating nonprofits about the opportunities and just the systems that are out there that they can leverage. And so I'd say, that was another part. I did a lot of training in my corporate roles, and
Mhm.
so part of that is learning how to teach your customer about your product.
Sure, sure.
Client and customer education, how to teach them why they need your product, and empowering them. And so those are things that I've learned that I've brought over into
Okay.
my business side.
Great, great. I mean, I'm sure that can be a whole session just unpacking that, but that gives us a snapshot.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of teachers kind of get intimidated because they don't have a business background.
Mm.
And can you speak to that as far as in transitioning to corporate America, not knowing the language, the lingo? What are some, things to help teachers overcome feeling, being intimidated? Because we are SMEs, subject matter experts of, what we teach, but then we go into corporate America and it's like, we feel like we don't know anything or we're not the smartest person in the room. So what, means of encouragement or what can we do to feel more confident or just to kind of even embrace this as an option for us?
Yeah, I'd say definitely start reading books. Reading is a big outlet for Alex. He's running out of Audible points to share with me because I always go through all my
Mm,
subscription points. So I ask him for his, and he
facts,
wants to save his
facts.
for his books. So anyways, but I'd say start reading.
Okay.
Adam Grant is a really good author. He talks a lot about corporate psychology, corporate dynamics, best practices. Patrick Lencioni, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. There are lots of authors out there that Francis Johansson, the Medici effect.
Hmm.
There's so many folks out there that you can start reading.
Yeah.
While you're getting the lingo and understanding the practice of sort of corporate America and how that world works. There are a lot of business books out there. I'd start reading them. If you're like me, you can, while you're doing your carpooling, you can listen.
Yes.
Our kids, I feel like they've read through everything from Brene Brown just being in the car,
Yes.
listening. And so, yeah, I would say start reading books. You can also join professional organizations.
Hmm.
Locally, there are lots of those. That's another really good way to get acclimated.
And I would also add, that if you're looking to get into ERP, enterprise resource planning, consulting, look at the systems that your school uses now. Now
Hmm.
you're what we call an end user, and
Hmm.
kind of go through clicking through the different menus and saying, is the functionality working
Hmm.
ideally for me? Or if I had an opportunity to pick another software or to
Hmm.
build this existing software, what tweaks would I make to make it more functional for me? And a lot of teachers have to cycle through all kind of software programs every single year, whether it's instructional, whether it's your you know ERP, whether it's products we use for absence or payroll, or if all kind of things we have to report on. Think about if you were the one that was building that, you know, what are the clicks you would do? How would you navigate? Because oftentimes that is the same process that we ask clients. Okay, what are your practices? How do you run, your business? How do you run your HR? How do you run your payroll? What's this, and that kind of determines how we build in the ERP world. And, you know, myself, who is in both worlds, as a teacher that uses some of these ERPs, I'm not thrilled at. I shake my head. It's like it'd be so much easier if it clicked this way, or if I didn't hit the back button. So as Kayla mentioned in the previous podcast, that she was an end user, and she was able to adapt by almost probably that same process because being an end user, hey, I wish this could have done this. So can they put this in the update? Why did they think of this?
Yeah.
Is this software really for the financial payroll team? Did they pick that software because they like it, or was it for teachers and parents and the bulk of the users? And that would be my personal experience and advice, because you know there's a lot of things we already do. It's just knowing. And as Kayla said in the previous podcast, you don't have to know how to code it. You don't know, it's just understanding what's the best process. And then you have a team of people that can take that idea and then turn this thing on, help you navigate so that you can be a more efficient leader, a more
Mhm.
efficient, organization. I know myself, as technologically savvy I am, it's frustrating when I'm in a ERP and it's like so antiquated. Like, what is this from the 1980s? Like, it's like driving in a car and it has an A track, or it doesn't have air conditioning.
Some
It has,
people like that, as you know. Some of our
I
clients,
mean,
they like their legacy systems. So
that's fine, but if you're living in 100-degree weather and you don't have air conditioning, well, you better roll down that way. That's your choice. There's some
yeah,
things that it can be made better, and
yeah.
you know, um, as teachers, we can share our opinions and we complain, but this is an opportunity for you
Hmm.
to get in the mind of what would work better. And also, because we are teachers, we are great listeners.
Yeah.
We think more systematically. We scaffold down learning from these higher concepts to, okay, Johnny's here, how do we get, and we'll do the same thing for a customer. This is the end goal. Okay, how do we get it so that now you're using a software product that helps your organization run better, that's cost you less time, so that your employees, your people, can spend less time on the kiosk and more time on what their main business is. So that's
Yes.
my little ERP consultant. Sorry.
That's
I,
good. No, it's
yeah.
good.
But it is possible. So I encourage you, as one person that has transitioned out and also doing both currently at the same time, it is possible.
It is.
Um, so let's talk about, impact, influence, and legacy.
Mm.
You talked earlier about being a TEDx speaker, an author. Well, we haven't talked about the author. We're going to get to that. Um, when you think about your life's work and what kind of impact do you hope educators listening will walk away? What kind of what would you want them to walk away when they say, "Okay, I listened to this podcast from Kayla
Mm.
Kirton. What am I going to walk away? What is she leaving this world with as a lasting impact in regard to any of those things or anything we've talked about today?"
Yeah, I think the first thing would be that you have the power and you are empowered to design the career that you want.
Say that again.
You are empowered and you have the power to design, curate, just like a museum, the career that you want. And so if your career was a museum, what are the pieces that you would want displayed, right? You carefully select
Yes.
the pieces to tell a story, right? And it's a cohesive thought. It could be like me, television journalism, HR, ERP practicing, consulting, and then entrepreneurship. But all of those pieces together tell a story
Yes.
of your growth and who you are as a person. And so you have that opportunity as well. Um, Whether you are a new teacher or you are a veteran teacher,
Hmm.
you still have that opportunity to curate the career path that you would like to have.
Okay.
And so I think that's really the major theme.
Okay. And I would like to pivot from one of the things I see as one of your many things to leave a legacy is your journal. You
Mhm.
talked earlier about, mental health and TED Talk. Can you talk about, that journal and how much it's impacted and will make an impact not only with students but people that are, are wrestling with, you know, thoughts that are not necessarily rational or healthy. Can you talk about the Lotus Journal?
Absolutely. So, the Lotus Journal came out of the TED Talk that I did. And I will start by saying that I am not a mental health professional. So, if anyone listening is struggling with their mental health or ideations, negative thoughts, please do call 911, or get yourself to a hospital, a clinic. They will evaluate you for free. They will give you an evaluation, and just make sure that you're safe. So please do that. But back to the Lotus Journal, it's really a journal that is based on TBT, which is trauma behavioral therapy. And it's a process where you examine what you're feeling, kind
Hmm.
of pinpoint what the fundamental root of why you feel that way is. I use the example of you walk into a room, you say hello, no one says hello back. And then you have the thought that, hey, no one likes me, or I'm not liked, or, whatever negative thought you have, right? And
Yes.
sometimes we don't realize that that negative thought wasn't just a random thought. It happened because you felt feelings, negative feelings about no one responding when you said hello, right? And so the thought journal helps you walk through that with some prompts and questions so that you can examine, hey, what was the root of this thought? And then there's a part where you ask yourself, hey, once I know why it happened, how I felt when it happened, what was my initial response, it asks you to examine your feelings, right? And to say, hey, okay, is this true?
Yeah.
Okay, I know that this happened. I know it made me feel like no one wanted me to be in the room, or no one likes me, or whatever. But how true is this really? Could it be that they just didn't hear me? Could it be that everyone's just busy? Could it be that I didn't speak up, right? It could be so many other things, not this negative thought that I'm having. And then last, you're going to come up with a plan. Next time something like this happens,
Mm.
how am I going to handle it, right? Am I going to make sure that I make eye contact and I'm heard, or I'm going to offer grace to the folks before I feel personally attacked? I'm going to just take the high road and say, you know what, great. Maybe they didn't hear me. I'm not going to misconstrue that as me not being liked or not being welcomed, right? And so that's what the journal does. It's pretty simple. I did not invent it. Like I said, this is part of the TBT practice, and so it's just a tool that we found that worked really well with our children in helping them process negative thoughts, and negative self talk.
Hmm.
We use it on each other as well. If we're having a bad day or we're having a challenging day, we kind of go through the questions. So it's really a great way to empower yourself or your loved ones about really examining why they feel the way they feel, and also creating a thought process to resolve those negative feelings internally.
Yeah, and I would also add to that that it's originally kind of focused on helping children, but it can definitely be a great resource for teachers, um,
Yeah.
because teachers, we work in silos. We might have you
Mhm.
know uh, you know 25, 30 students in our classroom. We're the only adult in the room, and sometimes it's difficult to talk to somebody or to just to navigate through the day when you're dealing with when we're navigating and trying to help students academically and emotionally, and so I would encourage, if you're out there, it's a great simple resource that it looks like a regular journal, and when you have those thoughts or feelings, you can go through the prompts, write the information, and process those thoughts, because the longer that those thoughts fester, it can only have eventually come out in a not so positive way. So emotional and mental wellness is important not only for students but also for teachers and adults. Um, can you share where we can get this resource?
Absolutely.
Put that in the
Uh,
show as well.
yeah, the Lotus Journal is available on Amazon. So if you search for Lotus Journal Keyla Kirton, Kirton, you'll find it there. We also have a website, lotusjournal.com, where you can get more information. I'd love to partner with an organization if you need a speaker to come and talk about just overall, mental health thought processing. Like I said, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just a caring adult that would be happy to share my experience with our family and how we've navigated, anxiety and depression with your group. I'd love to do that.
Mhm.
So lotusjournal.com. And we're also available. The journal's available on Amazon.com if you search for Lotus Journal Keyla Kirton.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it's again been a pleasure to talk with you. Can you speak to those teachers that are, you know, are trying to go through in transition, or it's now the second half of the year and they're considering if they can make that change or to move up to another level of educate of a position in education or possibly transition out? What words of encouragement, what source of hope can you leave us so that we uh, can be encouraged even more?
Absolutely. So you kind of map down several scenarios. One, if they are um, considering transitioning out of education, I would say if you possibly could finish out your academic year.
Mm,
I think it gives you time and pacing so that you can take the summer to really get yourself ready, get your resume updated, start looking into different career opportunities. Maybe use this spring to maybe join organizations,
mm,
really pace yourself and really do your research. It's going to help you transition well. It's also going to position you to make the best informed decision. I
yeah,
think if you really can, if you're really struggling, I'd say also before you make a decision, talk to a mental health professional. Make sure that you sort out what's going on. What's going on with your feelings. That you take your time and um, make sure that you give yourself that healing time to process because
yeah,
it's so important. If you have already decided that you are going to transition out, congratulations. That is so exciting and so scary. But please know that you will be okay.
yeah,
I think that a lot of us underestimate our ability to do well in a new context. And I think as long as you are humble, hungry, and you are committed to the process, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. I think the hardest part about this transition is going to be explaining to people what you do for a living.
yeah,
I don't think that we could do that in a word or two. Teacher, you could say, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. But when you're in consulting, okay, I do project management, I do a little bit of implementing software programs. It's almost I remember when I first started in consulting, and I was training early in career students who were transitioning to consulting fresh out of college. They would say they couldn't explain to their families what they did, and so some of their families thought, "Oh, he's a drug dealer because you can't even tell us straight what you actually do." So you may have some difficulty there explaining what you do for a living, but um, just be confident that you've made this decision. You're going to be okay. And Alex has had many an example of folks that have transitioned back to education. And that's not a mistake and that's not a bad thing. I think life is long and it's meant to be lived. And there are times that you go back, and that's perfectly okay. That's a part of your process. So own it. If you're going to transition to consulting, own that. If you're going to go back, own that. And wherever you are, make sure that you're making an impact.
thank you, thank you, thank you for your encouraging words and your insight. And how do we contact you if we need a little pick me up pep talk, or we need some more information from you, or to reach out to you?
Absolutely. So I am available on LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and type Keyla Kirton, you'll find me.
Okay.
Kirton. Also, happy to connect with you guys on lotusjournal.com. And I'm also on all the other social medias. So reach out. Happy to chat and happy to have tea, coffee, and be an encouragement. Looking forward to connecting with your audience.
Well, we love it, and we love you dedicating your time and making an impact. And thank you for just spending a good 2 hours with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Kirton. I really appreciate you sharing your platform with me. And also just want to applaud you for the work you're doing. It's so meaningful and so important. So keep up the great work.
Well, thank you. And if you are listening, please join us in for our next conversation with another great leader that's navigating through teacher transitions. For now, have a good evening.
Good evening.
And thanks for joining us today. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with a colleague. Keep learning, keep growing, and never stop believing in your impact, because you truly make a difference.